Thank you, Clayton. Peter and Clayton and Doug, would you all come up and join me? And this would be an opportunity, if any of you have any questions regarding what we have shared with you, let me know. Larry.
I would just like to ask you folks, when you first heard about, I don't know when it might have been that you first heard about the so-called inheritance tax, the tax on billionaires, did you ever think that that meant you?
That's a good question. My grandmother was shocked because my grandmother was shocked when she got the appraiser's estimate of what her property was worth. She turned to me and said, "My God, Jeff, we're millionaires." You know, she'd been living a very conservative life, driving a small car, and all of a sudden this appraisal comes in and said, "Oh." But what it's in dirt, and it's not easily sold. Yeah, so it was a shock. And at the time I was 19, so this was a rather shock for me too. I had no idea that the tax existed until Grandpa died, and then it's me and her trying to make things work.
Next question. Yes.
My name's Ben. For you generational farmers, I'm curious about this. Have you ever done some sort of bird's eye view in the sky of the territory of your farms from the time that it was its largest to the smallest, and done some sort of graphic display that shows how the government death tax has eaten away at the actual size of your property? So that have you done those kinds of things? That visuals help an incredible amount of, and so I'm just curious if you've done those, if they're available.
I have not. Okay, I have it in my head, and I can, all I'd have to do is draw on assessor's maps from the county, and I could put it together in about 30 minutes. Roughing it out, and it would be sizably shrunk. I don't even like to think about it, but I know where all those properties are and what it amounted to.
Some kind of a time-lapsed visual display would it would make the point so remarkably well.
That's a great idea.
What a great thought. Next question. Yes, Liz.
This table is hogging you here. Actually, it's a question for Doug more than anything. I'm just curious about something. There's every time the issue of the state tax comes up, it goes back to what Dick was talking about, the sort of vision of it just being for millionaires and billionaires, and they're just rolling in dough and all this. But it also seems to me that so many of the families who are out there who we classically consider to be from millionaire families, turn-of-the-century types, have shielded themselves from the estate tax by having foundations. They party in their foundation homes and they vacation in them, but they're not subject to the estate tax. If the estate tax were to stay around, do you think the whole debate might start changing if it also applied to family foundations?
Doug.
I think that would change the debate considerably, quite frankly. I don't know that there's the momentum to get it, but it's actually the reason I started into the academic research on this years ago. I mean, economists are dull people, and so they spend all of their time thinking about things like the efficiency cost of different taxes, basically because the tax causes you to rearrange your business affairs for tax purposes only, and that's a loss to this society. And you shouldn't have a tax system that does that, if at all possible. I never saw anyone talk about the estate tax in those terms. We talked about capital income taxes, payroll taxes, excise taxes on different things, but no one ever worried about the estate tax as an influence on the way people shape their business lives and ultimately their personal lives. And there's a lot of tax avoidance, legal but complicated structuring that is underneath the estate tax. I think that's a crucial issue. But as I said, that's what started me working on this. That was well over a decade ago, and I still don't see it getting any real traction, sadly enough.
Next question, Steve Enton.
Doug, I was very happy to hear you talk about tax shifting. And I was happy to hear you talk about tax shifting, and several of the gentlemen reported they could have hired a lot more people and bought a lot of equipment if they had been allowed to keep their own money. Congress assumes that when it passes a tax, it falls on exactly the people that they intend it to fall on, and it doesn't. So first, how do we make them understand that? And second, do the people in the towns and counties where you would be the employers sympathize and realize what's being done to them, and are they being of any help with Congress in trying to get rid of this thing?
You're asking that question of everybody. Gentlemen. Peter.
I can certainly address the second part of your question. As a business owner, of course, my employees are always asking, where are you going and what are you doing? And so I had to do a little bit of educating on the estate tax and its potential impacts. And one of my employees actually said it best the other day. He says, so I get it. So we're almost like all brothers, and dad is dad to everybody. And I said, well, that's an interesting way of looking at it. But basically, yeah, because if something happens to my father, it has repercussions all the way down the line. And now I know at least we have 30 very motivated employees that would also like to see a very fair conclusion to this.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would add, as far as part of your question was about the local community, are they sympathetic? And I think people are sympathetic, at least in the local community where the ranch is. Well, it's affected several people, that have sizable tracts of land that they farm or ranch. But to be honest, nobody has time. I mean, they're sympathetic, but to fight for it, they're busy running their farms and ranches. They're small business. Nobody has time to come to Washington, and then to contact, sometimes, getting in touch with reps or senators or what have you, decision makers, that's even more difficult. So it takes a considerable amount of time to fight it. So I think that's the biggest thing when I've talked to other people that have been affected. They'd rather just pay it, sell land, pay it, and move on, as opposed to, really try and fight it and deal with it.
So Steve's original question was, why is it that Congress doesn't understand tax shifting, who ultimately bears the burden, and how can we educate them? I have always believed that you educate them with two strategies. Strategy number one is vivid examples of the actual repercussions of tax shifting. Second is evidence that it's substantial in size. That it happens everywhere in the economy, has a big impact. But having said that, the third thing I'd say is, I was the director of the CBO. It was my job to educate them. The fact that I understand means I flunked.